So, if you haven't heard, Trump was going to be tariffing, of course, Mexico and Canada, and then literally at the 11th hour decided not to do it and backed out. He backed out both of these, and both of these tariffs have been paused now for the next 30 days. Whether Trump will actually go through, of course, with these tariff threats at the end of this month or even at the start of next month, we don't know. But the way that he blinked on these is just so dumb and ridiculous. First of all, he got Mexico to put extra troops on the border. Bear in mind, they're not really putting extra troops on the border. Those troops are already there. And we also don't know whether Trump is going to be serious about holding up his end of the deal of stopping arms flowing into cartels in Mexico. We don't know on that because, they might have to put, regulations on arms sales and things like that. And I don't think, as we've seen in the past, the Americans are going to be sort of very forthcoming on that when that comes. So we'll see what happens on that side. On the other side, of course, further to the north, Trump had signed, 2 months ago, not even Trump, 2 months ago, there was a border deal signed with Canada. And Trump is now praising this deal that was in place, signed, ready to go over 2 months ago. It's now in place, just about. And Trump's going, oh yeah, see this border deal, it was already ready to go 2 months ago. This was something Biden had, I believe, had come up with. We still don't know whether these tariffs are going to be in place, because if you're a business now, are these going to be in place in 30 days? That just puts so much uncertainty onto businesses, both in America, Canada, Mexico. Now, we do know, of course, the Chinese tariffs have gone into place, the 10%. China has, of course, retaliated. Of course, why wouldn't they on that? But also, Trump has now damaged so much American diplomatic goodwill, and he's basically done it in his first 2 weeks. So you can say goodbye to probably any of these other countries wanting to do anything with America for the next couple of years, bar you know rather than just placate him or anything like that. He's just burnt through any goodwill that he potentially might have had, even with Canada. Canada, and that says a lot of just how bad he's gone and done on this. And then, of course, the markets on Monday were in a free fall. It was wiping off a ton of money, and I think that's why partly he backed off on uh these tariff deals. I think a lot of people were probably on the phone to him saying, "Hey, Donald, what the hell are you doing? You're losing me a lot of money. Why are you doing this?" I think that's what's really happened. That's why these phone calls have gone, and that's why Trump has tried to find any way he possibly can, or should we say, people in his administration have tried to find anything they possibly can to sort of sell it and justify it as a win. Meanwhile, of course, economists were not happy. They were not impressed. Um, I've seen one economist come out and say that he thinks Trump is going to tank the US economy within his first 100 days. Meanwhile, of course, there was this fantastic piece we're going to go over called The Dumbest Trade War in History. And it lays out why Trump doing this, why starting this trade war is like the dumbest idea in the history of the world. And like I say, the title of the article speaks for itself, the dumbest trade war in history. So before we go on into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. Down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there is the Pony Club down below as well. So let's crack on then into this. The dumbest trade war in history. So you've got to remember this was written prior to the announcement these tariffs were being put on pause. So President Trump will now fire his first tariff salvo on Saturday against those notorious American adversaries, Mexico and Canada. They'll get hit with a 25% border tax, while China, a real adversary, will then endure 10%. That reminds us of the old Bernard Lewis joke that it'll be risky to be America's enemy, but it can be fatal to be its friend. Leaving China aside, Trump's justification for this economic assault on its neighbors makes no sense. White House press secretary Caroline Levitt says that they've, quote, enabled illegal drugs to pour into America. But drugs have flown into the US for decades and will continue to do so as long as Americans keep using them. Neither country can stop it. And like I say, it's the black market. You can never 100% stop this. As long as there is the demand, someone will be there to provide for that, be it illegally or legally. So he's right on that. You cannot stop it. You cannot stop it. Now there are ways you can mitigate some of the stuff, you know, legalizing sort of marijuana would be a massive step. You've seen the states that have done it. It's been actually a massive step in fighting illegal drugs. But you know, common sense just goes out of the window when trying to discuss this topic. Even in the UK, we still have that problem as well. But back to this. Oh, and yeah, by the way, I don't know if they'll bring up this article, but apparently fentanyl, one of the things that Trump is targeting, that coming from Canada, like 1%. I know, 1%. But still, he's gonna tariff Canada. The drugs, of course, may be an excuse, since Trump has made it very clear that he likes tariffs for their own sake, saying we don't need the products. We don't need the products that they have. Mr. Trump said on Thursday that we have all the oil you will need and all the trees you need, meaning the lumber. Trump also sometimes sounds as if the US shouldn't import anything at all and that Americans can be perfectly in a closed economy, making everything at home. This is called autarky. This isn't the world that we live in, or one that we should want to live in, as Trump may soon find out. Take the US auto industry, which is really a North American industry because supply chains in these three countries are now highly integrated. In 2024, Canada supplied almost 13% of US imports for auto parts, and Mexico 42%. Industry experts have said that a vehicle made on the continent goes back and forth across these borders over half a dozen times or more, as more companies now source components and add value to the most cost-effective ways. As we've said before, this is what we call just-in-time delivery systems. This is how international trade works. This is how manufacturing has really been developing as well. Mostly because, as we've seen, you know, in the single market and customs union, we went through this huge problem as well when, of course, we went and did Brexit. Still suffering from the consequences of that. Who knows what will happen in the future, of course. And we don't know how Starmer's reset will be gone as well. We'll probably be talking about that up in the coming weeks as well. But so far, maybe some good noise on that. And of course, everyone then benefits. The US, of course, trade representative says that in, of course, 2023, the industry added more than $809 billion to the US economy, or about 11% of the total US manufacturing output, supporting over 9.7 million direct and indirect US jobs. In 2022, the US exported over $75.4 billion worth of vehicles and parts to Canada and Mexico. That number jumped to 14% in 2023 and to 86.2 billion, according to the American Automotive Policy Council. The American car makers will be, of course, much less competitive without this trade. Regional integration is now an industry-wide and manufacturing strategy, also employed now in Japan, Korea, and Europe, aimed at using a variety of high-skilled and low-cost labor markets to source components, software, and assembly. The result has now been that the US industrial capacity in autos has now grown alongside the increased import of motor vehicles, engines, and parts. From 1995 to 2019, imports of autos, engines, and parts rose 169%, while US industrial capacity in autos and engines rose 71%. So as you can see, like, this industry is fundamentally changed for the better. For the better. You can see those statistics for yourself. Like, you know, and you'd think for these free market fundamentalists, numbers going up would be a good thing, but of course they don't, because, well, Trump's a fool, an idiot, and you wouldn't do this type of trade war on this. Anyway, as the Cato Institute, Scott Lincoln also points out, The data shows that as imports go up, the US production goes up. Thousands of good paying auto jobs in Texas, Ohio, Illinois, and Michigan's owe their now competitiveness to this ecosystem, relying very heavily on suppliers both in Mexico and Canada. Tariffs will now also cause mayhem in the border cross, of course, trade in farm goods. In the fiscal 2024, the Mexican food exports made up about 23% of total US agricultural imports, while Canada supplied some 20%. Many top US growers have now moved to Mexico because limits on illegal migration have made it now harder to find workers in the US. Mexico now supplies 90% of avocados sold in the US. Is Trump now an avocado nationalist? Maybe. Maybe. Quite possibly on that. It really does look like it. But that is all because of the clampdown started on illegal immigration back in 2016. They've found it ever and ever harder to get workers. Most of these farms, as we've seen in the UK as well, rely on foreign workers, not the domestic. And if you can't have these, you ain't growing. You can grow, but then you can't pick your crops, which means you've got who knows how much money sitting rotting in the ground. We've already seen this from American farmers worrying about this. And you've heard all the stories about the ice raids massively ramping up. I can guarantee you, come harvest time in America, there's going to be a lot of very, very upset farmers. Guarantee you. Then, of course, there's a prospect of then retaliation, which, of course, Canada and Mexico have shown that they know how to do for maximum political impact. In 2009, the Obama administration and congressional Democrats ended a pilot program that allowed the Mexico long haul truckers into the US as a supplicant in NAFTA. Mexico then responded by targeting a retaliation on 90 US goods to pressure key industries in key congressional districts. And this is what a lot of people have said, that the how you damage Trump, how you make him scream, how you make the Republicans put pressure on Trump is you target goods and industries that are in red states. Like you target those red states and you make them scream and squirm. And then they put pressure on Trump, and that ends a lot of this stuff. So these included Californian grapes, wine, Oregon Christmas trees, and cherries, jams, jellies from Ohio, North Dakota with soy. And when Mr. Trump then imposed the steel tariffs and aluminium tariffs back in 2018, Mexico then got results using that very same tactic, putting tariffs on steel, pork products, fresh cheeses, and bourbon. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has also promised to respond to the US tariffs on a dollar to dollar basis. And bear in mind, there's a lot of these provinces. You've actually seen, even though these things have been paused, Trudeau's also paused these things as well, but you've seen a lot of provinces respond. So we've seen American beer and whiskey being pulled from Canadian shelves. I guarantee you that is probably the same in a lot of other products as well. Like you can already see now that Canadians are not going to be buying US products. I guarantee you, if you are a US manufacturer, you have a US product in America, you are going to see a dip, probably quite for some foreseeable time in Canada. And they also tore up some Elon Musk contracts as well with Starlink, which was very good to see as well. Canada could also suffer a very larger GDP hit since its economy is so much smaller, but the American consumers will feel the bite of higher costs for some goods. None of this is, of course, supposed to happen under the US Mexico Canada trade agreement that Mr. Trump negotiated signed in his first term. The US willingness now to ignore its treaty obligations, even with friends, will not make other countries now eager to do deals. Maybe Trump will, of course, claim victory and and pull back, of course, if he does win some token concessions. But if a North American trade war does persist, it will qualify as one of the dumbest in history. and he's already pulled out of these. Already pulled out of these. Will he continue this? Will he take those concessions he's got from Canada and well, not even a concession, a deal that was already signed with Canada, and basically Mexico just upping some of its troop counts that it already has on the border? Win in Trump's mind, hopefully. Hopefully. Otherwise, in a month, guess what? Trade war back on, boys. Now, of course, he has continued with those tariffs on China, that 10%. China's already said it is going to retaliate. I believe they already have announced that retaliation already. So you're going to see products get, done there. And like I say last time, this is what happened before. And guess what? US farmers suffered for it to the point Trump had to bail them out. People forget that in his first term, but that's what happened. And bear in mind, if you've got Elon Musk now doing God knows what kind of damage that we've heard about, oh boy. I've talked before about the possibility of you know, doing or like a documentary should be made about the rise and fall of Twitter. Just this week alone, like what has gone on, and Elon Musk's actions in like the US, like digging into US data and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know if people heard they lost the US census information. They just lost it. I know, insane, right? But Elon Musk, I think, is doing a lot of damage, and it wouldn't surprise me if, as I've said before, well, I said on the live stream, if Elon Musk end up being responsible for one of the biggest security breaches in US history, would not surprise me on that front. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think down below as well. Do you think this is going to reignite in a month's time? Do you think Trump's going to be placated by getting these quote wins? Who knows? Who knows at this point? Trump in this second term is proving to be a lot more unpredictable than I think people initially thought he would be. Um, but we'll have to see on that front. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.